Right, folks, thank you for all coming back from lunch. So we've had a morning session listening to a number of submitters, and of course you will have all read the submissions from everybody else. A lot of reading in there, and it's not easy reading. We'll discuss that later, but I'll hand over to our duo at the end of the table.
Tina Koto. Yeah, thank you. Tina Koto, everybody. So what this report now is about, as you heard from your submitters this morning for the oral submissions, now this is actually considering all the submissions that we've received during the public consultation. You'll see that we've got a mixture of informal and formal, and these ones we're particularly looking at is the formal consultation. Giving you some stats, so we've received 150 submissions. Now, because our topic is quite wide, those submissions have been broken down into activity components, received a star comment, and now we're bringing those to you as well. So we thought that we might start off with the ones that have been actually already considered by our community boards. So in Appendix 2, you'll find them highlighted in light blue. And we've also handed around a summary of the resolutions made by the community board. So if the chair is happy to work that way, and then we can head on to looking at them in chunks of activities. I think that
makes perfect sense. Thank you. So first one's Tibia Valley, right?
Correct.
And just in terms, before we go to that, in terms of the Tibia, I'm just trying to find the email, but I've lost it. Sally Feynman from the Tibia did want me to make some comment, but right now I can't. I recall her saying that she's very much in favour of reducing that grant funding. It was, Tibia had wanted to double that grant funding, but after listening to the public and recognising the situation we're all in, we actually know, and there are reserve funds there that they can dip into should something come up. And the playground, let's put that into the long-term plan so it can work alongside other things. She was fully supportive of those two things, and is, like all of us, very, very cognizant of what is happening, the effect that it will have on the people of the Tibia. That you know, when it comes to rate rises, they're the same as everybody else. She understands that the rates increase will impact on the Tibia as well across the district, and that was why she made those two recommendations. So that's just from Sally down there. So let's go through them one at a time. I think the Tibia Valley, that makes perfect sense. We're not going to contradict any of that, are we, councillors? No. Cromwell Community Board, that was essentially, if I recall rightly, from 2 days ago, Sarah might be able to help me. That was just a CPI increase, wasn't it?
They were after more, but we agreed to CPI, didn't we?
Yeah.
On an annual, so for just for a year, for the year rather than what they requested, which was backdated. Yeah.
And the Nevis Cemetery, obviously, Nevis rather, it takes a lot to get up there to get the grave digger and so forth up there, so it does have separate costs. So that's what he's all about. Some community board. Do you want to talk to that, Tony?
Sure. So we had a couple of comments come in that have been captured in the grants policy, and whether the grants policy is fit for purpose for all the things that we want it and need it to do. And one of those aspects is whether the Blossom Festival can be considered potentially as a line item in the long-term plan next year. So we just wanted to signal that to council that that's something that we'd like to be considered. The ownership area, so the Businessman's Track, which I think is a great name, which is the walking track that runs from the car park here along this side of the river, heading up towards the transfer station. It's a quite well-formed four-wheel drive track for most of the way. Although it's quite good, you can't go any further. So if you're a friend trying to get away and you drive down there, you just not going to get very far. It's caught many out over the years, and that there is no exit. But there's a piece of land that they'd quite like to make it a loop so that you can get from that track up into the Boundary Road area. So we just have asked that staff investigate the ownership as to whether it's Lynn's area or CODC, because all they are asking for is if it's CODC land, can volunteers have permission to form a track on it. So it's not going to cost us any money. Volunteers have already been found to do the work, so they'd just like to know if they can use the land And I guess if it is a piece of Lynn's land or someone else, then maybe we can put them in touch with the right people to give approval. And then the recommendation from VCB that the storage fee for the Clyde camp be increased from $400, including GST, to $400 plus GST.
It's no great debate amongst the board about any of that. It's all firmly supported.
Yeah.
Any questions to Tamer on that stuff? And Money Toto Community Board, Stu, you were there, but oh gosh, Tanya Murray from Lowby came and Derek King's behest from the very active Money Toto business group, which I would say per head of population is punching way above its weight. They're really keen to put lights on the railway station and to beam lights at the railway station. They're just, wanting us to get that on the radar, really, for the MCP.
Discussion came up at the business meeting and we fast tracked and tried to get it on here, so.
I did suggest there might be a solar company out that way, might want to do it for them, but I got told to shut up, so.
It's the first time we told that out there.
I don't believe that might be the case.
So the reason that it has come back through the council with that LTP is that it's actually a district building.
Yeah.
And it's a capital cost. So we need to make sure that we put it into the program.
So in terms of what the boards have put up to us, everybody's content with what we've got, and therefore when we get to them, recommendations C, D, E and F are all taken care of, which brings us to B. Considers the submissions and decides on what actions should be taken. You want to comment further here?
I think if you're comfortable, have to go through those just activities at a time. And probably if we can just pause before we talk about the business support, because the business support activity also has all of the items around the overall rates rise and also the priorities as well. It'd be good just to pause there and I can make some comments there.
Okay, fire away.
So 3 waters. And the submissions here. There was 11 comments and the key themes are included was the importance of continued engagement with residents on the options, the drinking water quality and the connection costs. And you can see those within there. Was there any questions or queries?
The only comment that I'd make is that we've been told, not just in 3 waters space, but in all spaces, that we need to be more efficient. We need to find better ways to do things. And I just can't help myself but point out the irony that some of the people who came here to tell us that today were vehemently opposed to the 3 waters reforms that, whilst not perfect by any means of the imagination, were designed to make things more efficient and looking at a different way to do things. And here we are.
The irony isn't lost.
Other than that, any questions on 3 waters? Because we don't have a choice. The drinking water standards were supported by all parties back in November 21. ACT and National voted against them, but only on the basis of the depth to which they applied in terms of 1 house plus 1 house makes a water supply. Other than that, they were on board with the increase to the standards. So that's not going to change. Wastewater is still a bit up in the air.
Is it possible that we can, especially in light of one of the submitters today, a very sensible solution that we keep our eyes and ears open to other alternatives in relation to water, for potential things where it might come from the community. So like the tank.
I wondered if that was something that we could not necessarily do, but perhaps help others.
We can do all of that. I don't know what Plan Change 19 says about retention tanks and that sort of stuff, but that all imposes a cost on a build when you stipulate it. It's free for builders, developers to do it right now. There is nothing stopping them. The minute we, something like that, you impose it, because it is a really good idea.
Yeah.
You'll have a group of people saying, well, you've just thrown another cost at us.
You know what though, if you want to get more people on buses, put petrol up $5 a litre. And I think that if we, in the long-term plan, look at actually making the cost of water lie more with the user paying by looking at our volumetric ratios, then the on-flow, excuse the pun, effect of that could well be that people start to look at alternate ways of paying for their water.
And that's always been a conversation that's been paid for the LTP. It just, we didn't get around to having it this time around because we didn't consider the LTP. Because it is pretty cheap at its current volumetric rate.
And it hasn't increased for 12 years. So it needs to be that rebalancing between UAG and the volumetric.
They will come to us now, I think they know.
Do you think that that would fit under our purview, one of the submitters comments around bulk buying rainwater tanks? Could we say to the community, come put your name on a list and then we'll buy 150,000 litre tanks or?
Well, so the bulk buying, from my experience, when they talk about bulk buying water tanks in the Wellington region, it's 200 litre tanks and it's there for resilience.
Yeah.
It's not there, because it was designed around earthquakes that you've got, 20 litres per person in that household for 7 days. That's about the only thing I'm aware of that councils have bulk bought of that scale and not a 10,000 litre tank or 1,000.
Most people don't want 1,000 litre, but, a 10,000 litre, but 1,000 litre or a couple of hundred. Is there something we could?
We could
But they,
explore
if people would buy them individually,
It's
there's the cost of freight to bring them to.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, like in the water shortage in Wellington this year, last year, there was a massive surge on those things moving out the door. From council, because it's subsidised, but actually, up a hut, it's sat in its stocks for a very long time. But for sitting in the backyard, no one did it.
What if we sold them in advance, like our cheese roll fundraiser, so?
I think we'd be doing the job of placemakers and might go there, wouldn't we, if the demand's
Still,
there.
we go and say, hey, there's people in our community that might be interested, would you guys like to do a deal? Happy to call them there.
It's gonna take a while to fill it.
So I think, like the current district plan, I'm not sure about the change 19 from Peter, doesn't allow you to use rainwater for consumption because we
No,
don't.
and not consumption.
Yeah,
So
so
these
it's
people are washing their cars and watering their lawns and
Recycling.
yeah,
rainwater.
recycling rainwater, not drinking it,
Yep.
just using it outside.
Yes.
Where would that sit with the safety requirements in building? You've got to prove.
Yeah, so you
So-
have to meet drainage
Would it-
requirements, but if you're actually irrigating, you.
But can you get that through a VM?
School used to be drinking water.
There wouldn't be a problem with getting that through building.
I don't think so, we just have to design that if it's,
But it,
Because
we should put people now.
and people can do it right now, there's nothing to stop builders, but if we impose it, then it becomes an additional cost.
No, I don't think we should impose that, but I think we should, if we can enable it,
We're still on that.
not by subsidising,
Yeah.
just by facilitating.
Well, let's see where I think this would be a perfect adjunct discussion to the LPP next year. If we do wind up in a place where the per unit cost comes up and people go, hey, gosh, I'm not going to be able to water my lawn, then maybe we do start.
Same with mowing. It's same with petrol too.
Yeah,
Same mowing it.
yeah, well, there's that.
And I also think when we're reviewing 404, that is a feasible option, we can address it and then there's a kind of a encouragement.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and that did come through that incentivise the people. So,
Maybe the people who needed to act, who are currently connected to the stormwater, they've got their stormwater connected to our wastewater systems, might like to look at the other.
And dare I say, council will need to look at itself. Our biggest cost parts is the watering of the greenways in Colin.
Don't you not order my grand?
And we are watering them with treated water.
That's right.
So it's just cost to treat water. And then so people have to bring, so
And we're not.
if we're going to expect the citizens of our community.
So if we all filled a tank and then we all watered that bit of greenway closest to us, we all took a patch.
Right, moving on. Roading.
So you're voting there, you had, 12, submissions containing comments in relation to, 10, I wasn't reading the right one. Yeah. And key themes, so these, when I say key themes, they're repeated more than once. Footpath, road and bridge improvement requests, cycle and walkway access and speed limits.
So the roading space is very much do more. In brackets 40s. Yeah. Stu, do you have any comment on that as roading portfolio there?
Well, the footpaths have been looked at, mainly a piece of moorings and the rest of it's status quo, try and make sure we get the service right and bridge improvements and replacements in some cases. Cyclists and walkways are there and there's no money from Rocky Taylor or any of these others for that, so. And speed limits have been addressed to our submission process.
just bearing in mind what one of the submitters said today about, and it may, and I'm anticipating this is not going to be palatable to the majority of the community, but if there is a portion of road that wants to be done and there was approval, there wasn't approval from NZTA for their portion.
Do they want to pay for it?
Half of it's us though. So we'd be asking the ratepayer for
We'd be paying
600 metres of road as we go into, but look, all those options are worth exploring, absolutely, but it's easy to say.
Only the ones that obviously that are in the schedule and.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and if they
get
get,
the new ones in.
if it was a dead end driveway where the user, if the people who live there are claiming to be the users, that would be one thing, but that's road is used by all and sundry.
That's the reason it needs to be sealed.
Yeah, but it can't.
There's a lot of roads that people will say need to be sealed.
If you want to ask, if in terms of questions on the submissions and it's fitting into the different categories.
Yeah,
just go
it
for it.
And there was a comment around shutting off or dimming the streetlights during low use hours at night. I thought we already dimmed them at night. Does anybody know?
I know we've got, LED lighting, which has lower
Consumption.
Yeah, yeah.
brightness.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we actively dim them. I'll check that.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
They seem to use less.
Well, yeah, much less. Yeah.
Yeah, we put them all in, the power companies put all the prices up in direct response to LEDs going in. They adjusted their price until the returns were the same, if not higher.
All right, any more rating ones, folks? Regulatory and planning. Neil. Right, regulatory and planning.
You've got 12 comments in relation to regulatory and planning activity, and key themes include consenting processes, formal development, managing growth, Resource Management Act reform, and use of consultants. Are there any other questions relating to the ones under that?
In terms of, sorry, and Stuart Calder raised that, in terms of encouraging people into those fields, how much of a presence, we have the cadetships, but how much of a presence does council have those job fairs and things like that that we've had in the past? Things that been one in Queenstown, just because I had a conversation with someone about it the other day, that they've said, oh, you know, there's so many people from these high schools go to particular courses in Dunedin because that's what is known, but there's a lot of other options out there that kids have no idea about.
I'm aware that there is staff going along to ones like that at the high school. And I know that we put out publication, as I was asked to be a part of that, to write my history as to how I ended up in local government. So there is those out there, and I believe there is staff. And
I think you've done some videos and.
yeah,
So we've got a recruitment video that the planners did. It's actually great. It's on our website.
Yes.
We, from time to time do an expression of interest, but we don't want to have a whole and we're desperate and all at a time.
No.
We do engage with Otago University and in-plan students, and we encourage their research projects here to help them through our workplace. We've got staff reviews of the Planning Institute, but we feel as though it's really quite challenging.
Yeah.
And I think Stu Calder in his comment that he would recommend his child came here for a couple of years and got all the knowledge and went up to a consultancy is exactly what it is.
That sums it up pretty well, doesn't it? We're the learning ground, and no matter what we do, I don't think you're going to change that. It's just a place you have in some of these things, at the end of the day, if they didn't do what they're doing, the consultants wouldn't charge so much, and the application, the fees for processing wouldn't be so expensive.
And would you say, either Neil or Louise, that the complexity of the stuff that's coming through on a more regular basis for council to deal with means that a lot of it is outside the scope of a new graduate with 1 to 3 years experience? And that's where we're then having difficulties and having to bring in external consultants because we don't have the expertise in-house, because they will come here and then leave.
We're still getting a lot of mainstream consent, so 2 lot subdivisions, that sort of thing. Our gap is in senior planning. The whilst a planning manager and a senior planner and an intermediate planner in short succession will never replace the planning manager, so that's something that they used to now. And we don't have a senior planner. We're currently talking to someone hopefully will fill a gap, but yeah, it's just hard.
Anything more on planning and regulatory? We move on to environmental services. Stephen Darling raised the point that, well, actually his friend John raised the point about our trucks going to Timaru. We know that. It's just it was always going to be a stopgap measure, and the sooner we can get that composting plant built, the better. And I think the 4404, which surprisingly the star of the show today, with 3 well put together submissions on it, seems to be enhanced.
Yeah, to be totally honest, I don't think it will solve everything.
Right.
Some of the comments about us needing to streamline the process and speculating, and we're working.
You're working on that?
Yeah.
What if the idea of the fast track where you pay more, and Sarah gave the great example of, if you need your passport now, you're paying more for it. Is that something that's been considered?
If we're functioning well, it shouldn't need to happen.
Right.
So we haven't considered that in the past, but we've taken a note of what it comments and we'll certainly take that consideration.
Property and facilities. From Cromwell, and we got this a lot in drop-in sessions, mostly away from Cromwell, ironically. But I think a lot of people who aren't from Cromwell aren't realise that most of it's already paid for through land sales, and within 5 years, the rest of it will be paid for by land sales. So I can totally understand why people are going, why the hell are my rates going up 30%? You're building that, but the two aren't directly related at this stage.
I think that what that item shows are a lot of misunderstanding, and we heard from some other submitters about saying how we need to tell people more about what's happening. And I'm going, we can tell, but there's just so much to tell that you're never going to get everything across without providing a large document. And we heard some criticism about our consultation document. You go and look at it, and we tried to graphically show the electricity cost increases, the insurance, all those things, and people who are familiar with it, like Trevor Gowdy, didn't get it. And I really, I can't think we're that bad, but it's just how do we get that message across, or are people only look at the big picture and don't want to make those connections? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And because it was on page 10 of the consultation document, the supporting information was available in our civic centres, service centres, and obviously they were all available electronically. So the detail around some of the questions around water was in the supporting information. I don't think some of the speakers saw that supporting information and only saw the consultation document. And so that's always a balancing act, isn't it? And look, and next it's going to be even more challenging, because the LTP is going to go into a lot of detail. There'll be the revenue and financing strategy, the asset strategy for 30 years, so on and so on. And you want people to engage, then if you put out a consultation document too long, getting that balance right, and then point them to the direction where they can find the further information. I think that's going to be one of our challenges.
It comes through at the same time. Some people know you've got to dumb it down, and other people we need more. But could you have that, where we've got the consultation document, and I can't remember from the website if there was a button that you can click underneath saying, like, are you ready to go to like platinum level? And you've read a full draft, like if you're feeling like you've got this.
Along the side, you could, you could actually go to the supporting.
I think the other complexity we've got too is that we are so prescribed the act of how we show the information. So we could show the information clearer in an LTP, for instance, or in an EP document, but you'd actually be doubling the pages because you have the practical look and then the specified look. So we do have that added complexity. I think from a executive leadership team is talking about the LTP going forward, and there is, it's probably about really connected sound bites over the next 12 months. So we're building up the picture
rather than just going out with a consultation document. Kind of, this is how we've solved the issues, or this is how we're going to deal with the issues, is that we kind of make sure that we're connected in some way to the community as we go through the process.
It's, you need to go and get the balance right, but it's
It's very different.
very difficult. Community experience, we're ready to move on to that. That's
No.
next, no?
Do we have to?
And property and
So
facilities.
property facilities, community,
Yeah.
I think community experience, we're on
community
page
experience, if you're,
15
Yeah.
of the agenda. And 24 of the comments from Parks and Bricks and one of the library. Interesting to see so many people saying cut some pine trees down.
so it was, it actually came through from the brainstorming of the long-term plan, and that's actually one that's actually followed all the way through, weaving it into the, what was going to be the LTP, then it went back to the annual plan, and that is actually a community idea that's come to us and has actually made it all the way through.
One of the things that came from a submission around parks was surrendering small areas to surrounding landowners or community groups for planting instead of paying for them to be mown. Would we be open to that opportunity for communities to adopt a reserve or a park space or a community garden? Yeah, yeah.
Do you smell that, sir?
That's what you, as a consideration.
You can take forward into the LTP.
Yeah.
A lot of councils do it.
Certainly with my old property hat on, you just got to be wary of what the type of status, and what kind of status is, and also that quite often, while we encourage, the community groups to come up with a proposal and come to us, we've got to also look at the long term as well, that you may create this or create this community garden, but you've also got to have the numbers of volunteers to be able to continue into that, whereas it historically, it can come back to council to then maintain, and then we're adding costs. So it's balancing that all up, and it's probably on a case by case basis.
And I think highlighted too, which has come up before, is it is a lovely idea to have a garden that's a wildflower meadow instead, which looks lovely, but realistically in this sort of high-risk area, we just can't allow things to just grow.
Well, the risk is a romantic attachment to it falls away in years 2 and 3, the council will be responsible for getting the weeds in it, put it back in grass, and then go back to the process of putting it back in mud.
All times. When I was first mayor, I stopped in a small town that I won't name, and it had done a campaign where the businesses grew vegetables outside the businesses, and along had these, community gardens, just little ones outside. What a great idea. I thought it was fantastic, and I raved about it for a while. And I went through the town about 9 months later, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
Because they all got to see, nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
So you've got to be really careful of quick volunteer fatigue and burnout in what remains afterwards. Community vision.
You had total of 7 covering this department, and key themes was obviously the policy and recommendations to Whata Ora, comments around the public transport, workforce accommodation, cycleway maintenance, hospitality industry, loss and festival grant, and museum equipment. So the key things coming through. Is there any questions with regards to those submissions? Still start coming in.
LRC put money into their LTP to assist councils to investigate their own options for public transport. Is that something that we would look to do the same in our LTP?
Probably best, Dylan, would you like to comment on this? Because I know a staff member that you've got under you is dealing with this.
Yeah, so that was a conversation with OIC colleagues around this. It's a conversation we can have with yourselves as we go into LTP. The relative cost versus potential benefit. It's off the cuff, we don't need to probably there, but we're further conversation. The investment level that ORC are putting in.
So 36 grand to investigate 4 different routes, one in Oamaru, one here, one in Wanaka, and one from Beltuba to the airport. I mean, I don't see how far you can get the 36 grand to do all of those, but if we could get in first to grab all of that money, don't forget this one, 15 minutes.
Survey matters.
Yeah.
Interesting. With Whataora, I spent the first 2 hours of the day in meetings with seniors in Whataora staff over what's happening in our health service. It's working away at mayoral level, but what we do at the council level. On Blossom Festival Ground, I'm presuming that's somewhere to come through for discussion on the LGB. And it has merit. The museum grant, we had Sam in to talk. I don't think there's anything. Nobody's talking about stopping that 50,000, are they? It's in the budgets. And
Oh, yeah, it's all right for that AD.
is that
So through the chair, if you look back at your community board resolution, so 3 points and have it in there.
Yes, of course they are. Thank you. All right, business support.
All right, so as I said, it'll be good to pause here because this also has the overarching things that came through, and you'll see that overwhelmingly from the submissions received, both formally and informally, there was really strong concerns from our community about the affordability of the rates increase. My work colleague as well spent quite a bit of time analysing, not just from an activity level, but taking a look at this data from key themes overall, and you'll see that over 50 comments opposed the rates increase. So you can see that on page 6 as well. Those comments and those overarching priorities as well. So any comments or questions that you'd like to make about that?
Yeah, well, this is where we get down to the number of it, isn't it? That
Yes.
we've got rates increases that we've been told that we don't. Rents are going to have massive impacts on people, and for me, as I said, we've got a whole lot of costs that we can't do a great deal about at the moment. So what are our options? We started off at 44% on average back in February. It's now down to, what's the number now, Peter?
18.3.
18.3.
18.26 inclusive of growth.
Right, 18.26. So that's a lot of stuff that's been dealt with that's behind the scenes that people say do something now, but a lot's been done before now to get to that point. The LTP next year is going to have some conversations with the community about things that we're not doing anymore, or that we plan to do that we're not going to do, or that we plan to do that we're going to do less. And the nature, and I can totally understand why people don't understand that this is an annual plan and those big decisions. If we were to decide to not do something that was in the last LTP, we need another LTP to do that, and that's just the way the law goes. So unless anybody has got a great idea for how we can cut costs further, that leaves us 3 options. One is to proceed.
Go back, and I know it's been working on, it's operated within the budget, because there's been time and time we've sat here, and there've been 5 waters all of a sudden jump out of the budget. Arts and Rec have jumped out of the budget. And I think that's probably frustrating, and some, oh, hey, we've got to re-go back. That's one thing. As staff, we can absolutely make sure we ride that really hard until it's got to come back, because there is a major issue, and that water requirements, the classic zone.
Yeah, you're right. So in terms of cutting costs and managing costs,
that they don't have.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
understand that historically, this council always has surplus, not deficits, but overall, so you spend less than,
Anticipated.
And that's one of the 2 options strengths that remain to us is we either proceed with what's now an 18 point something % average rates rise, or we stagger it. There was a lot of people talk today about staggering it. Don't do it now, do it over in stages. And we're seeing some councils do that. But if we were to say, well, okay, we'll run at a loss this year, which what that means is easy to say, run at a loss, and then, catch it up in years to come, but nothing's changing next year. The cost increases are continuing that are going to affect us. Inflation's dropping a bit. That's not all that's happening. The increased work we need to do because the regulations we're starting to change it. But staggering simply means that we'd be putting off, let's pick a number, $10 million, which means next year we've got to find 10 million plus the interest on that.
If that be the case, we might as well just cut it out of our budget originally, not done rigid roads or bridges, we've not done anything else, not that wrong, so.
But that's an option. It's an option that we can take if people feel And alongside that option is we can underfund our depreciation, kick the can down the road.
Again,
Those are the things that today is the day to say, well, with 18.2 isn't good enough start. We want you to take one of those other courses of action, because the next time we look at this thing is to say pretty much yes or no under our legislative deadlines. This is the moment, Susan.
I think the other thing to just bear in mind is that there was decisions taken over COVID, where you might have been planning an incremental step in the rates, and because of the effect of COVID, I understand at that time didn't increase the rates or by a very minimal percentage. So some of this is around the comms of the fact that you're actually getting wearing those increases for some time. So you've effectively phased it because you've kept it low, and now you're having to deal with it. Does that make sense?
Because I think also got it to that by reducing the rates in that period following COVID, which was sort of Medicare pay, that didn't stop those costs escalating. We just didn't match them, and now
That's good.
we're catching up.
We're now down the road and the Cairns landed us.
well, we always,
Because we never anticipated when we sat around this table in 2020 that 2024 was going to be a terrible year.
Interest rates.
We thought it was 2020, and then we thought it was 2021, and it just kept
and
getting
with that, we
worse.
had a reserve bank that was talking about printing money, Adrian Hall was looking at how do we print money. And I mean, you sitting there going, well, anyway, we can encourage us spending to keep the economy going. And then we had hyperinflation and hyper interest rates, and it's called the world on fire. But we couldn't have done anything with staff and those things anyway. Roading would have been ideal to get roads and bridges when people weren't travelling, and, you know, COVID stopped industry.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we've got competing, and if you take the community as a whole, we're all part of the community. No one wants to pay more rates. That's just a reality, of course. But we've got competing interests within our community. We've got one section of the community that's saying be brave. The other section of the community is saying enforce austerity measures. Now, they don't meet in the middle, and somehow we have to make a decision, and it's not going to be liked by at least one or more groups in our,
80% of people.
well, potentially, but some people, and I don't believe, if, like, just reiterating what everyone else has said, I don't believe we can make a decision based on just today. We can't do that. That's not our job, actually. Our job is to make decisions for our community to go forward. And yes, we can probably do cuts, in which we've already done, and I really appreciate the team's work on where they have cut. Because, I mean, we could spend a lot more, but that's certainly not what
Some
we
people
want.
would argue shouldn't.
Yes,
When we look at the depreciation, and obviously we're not fully funding depreciation on everything we should be, what are our rates like across that? In terms of, is the not fully funding amount the same across the board, or is it different depending on what we're talking about?
It's different depending on what we're talking about.
Which is the next challenge, because we've got pensioners saying we can't afford it because we're on a fixed income, but then we also have young families who can't afford it, who are on a fixed income, who will also probably get to the end of their lives and not have a pension, because it's entirely possible that it won't be there. So this idea that this is only going to impact one segment of the community or one segment more than others is a fallacy. It is going to the entire community, but we are really
And then expression.
around what more can be cut.
And I think the reason that we've got this big issue at the moment is the fact that we go out with, and we can't do anything else, we go out with the average rates increase, but the increase is more substantial for the residential ratepayer. So it's more substantial, doesn't matter whether you're the Tevere Valley or Manitoto or Cromwell or Vincent. The residential ratepayer in this round is paying if they're connected to water and wastewater and have environmental services.
That's when the big costs have impacted, and that's why at 13 Shorman Street, my house, including the rate calculator, is going up by 31%. And it's water, wastewater
And waste.
and waste.
And the same as, what was it, 3 years ago when it was the rural sector
Yeah,
and it was
exactly.
38%.
Yeah.
Actually more.
And I think one of the things we've got to look at also is that, you hear in submissions that we should be, staff should be, we should be sacking people, making people redundant, that's, like what central government's doing in Wellington. Well, when you look at where we are as an employer, we struggle to fill vacancies. We're not paying, we struggle to pay market rates. Hence the reason why we have shortages in particular areas for critical staff. When you look at the report from Taxpayers Union about where we sit as compared to similar sized communities and what we're actually rating, we're cheap. So we're coming off a low base. Now, and one of the reasons we're coming off such a low base is because we've deferred depreciation on items. As elected members, we haven't had the courage in the past to go out and actually say this is what it's costing me. The hard call we're going to make today is something which should have been made probably by some of my colleagues 20 odd years ago. Because, and as
But you didn't, because we thought the rate increases beyond 3, 4, 5%.
exactly, and we didn't have the courage to do it. And the reality is that the generation which is using it, the asset has not paid for it. And that's the fundamental message we've got to get out there, is that this is a correction. It's a correction of a historic, it's not an anomaly, it's a mistake that, and I've been part of that in the past. We were too frightened to pass those laws on. We didn't depreciate our roads, our bridges, our footpaths. So the people who are using it have not paid for it. Well, I'm sorry, they're now having to pay for it.
Lucky the voters came along.
So the question we have to ask ourselves today is a number that following. Are we confident that in an annual plan year, there's nothing more that we can easily say to staff, or clearly say to staff, here's what you're going to do in terms of cutting? And if the answer to that is yes, we're confident that there's nothing more there, then the only other question we have to ask is no, but is today going to pay for today, or are we going to kick the can down the road for tomorrow? And if the answer to that is no, today is going to pay for today, then here we are.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, and some of us may pay that price in October next year. But I'm not frightened to say that it's time we actually started looking at the reality of it all. And I take Tamer's point before about, we hear a lot about pensioners and people on a fixed income, but the young families on a fixed income. Most people who are in salary positions are on a fixed income. There's no easy way out of this. This is just the reality of the situation we're in. We hear people say, okay, well, don't go ahead with the Cromwell Mall project. Well, the Cromwell Hall project, that is not going to have a positive impact on rates, right? It's not going to alter that 18.5%. Stopping the Riverside Park is not going to save ratepayers. It's not going to have an effect on that percentage.
It's not going to make a huge difference.
No, not make a huge difference. And there are retailers in there who are hanging out for that extension on Riverside Park because it's hopefully going to stimulate some business down there and alleviate some of the empty shops. So look, I don't think we have a choice. It is what it is. We've got ourselves in the situation through external reasons, decisions that we made during COVID to keep rates increases back because of the difficulty. We knew then it was going to be a bow wave. We never knew it was going to be to this extent. Nobody could predict that inflation would go from 1.5% to somewhere near 7.5% in 2 to 3 years. And we've been caught by it.
And much more inflation rates for things like insurance and extra the 3 years in rating programs. I think we just have to be really careful in our messaging that this is not, this has occurred over a long period of time, apart from the inflation effects of recent times, but, funding decisions over depreciation and using reserves rather than debt, etc. That has happened over a long period of time. So we're not going to be able to correct that this isn't one of, we're going to have to look at really strong ways of looking at that financial strategy over a period of time so that we can make sure we do phase in some of these corrections when we think about the indigenous and for the
And I think another thing is, many people that we've heard from today were also super critical of the previous government's attitude towards clean waters. And we now have a new government who's decided that we still have to pay for our 3 waters. Well, we're a community of fairly small size with some fairly big bills coming, and we're going to have to pay for ourselves.
We were always going to have to pay.
Yeah.
It's just how it's going to be structured in the background.
Well, it's,
And there's a
you
lot
can
of,
see with Watercare, the way that's structured, that Watercare is now off Auckland's books. Auckland cannot involve itself in Watercare's money. That's got the balance sheet separation, so they've got longer periods to pay debt back. They've got a great debt, and that was where the savings plus efficiencies of having professional boards. That's where it's going to come from. There's a lot of fluff around it that mucked it up, but and actually where we sit now, the current government is steering us in a very similar direction. So we're kind
a
of
huge amount of work is going on in the background to address these costs going forward. It's not like we're throwing our hands up and going, I will just pay.
Water came forward faster than we probably ever anticipated being stuck in their box.
yeah. You got a comment?
Just to make the observation is that you said about kicking the can down the road, and in the past we have done that. What I've learned is that you've still got to pick up that cost that you kick down the road, but then the costs on those costs that are going to happen as well. So if you today decide to say, well, you can push some stuff down the road and do this and do that, it's still going to be there. It's not going to go away, and it's going to come back in a far bigger way. And I think if you go back to the COVID type stuff, we're probably seeing the impact of that now. It doesn't mean the decisions that we made back then were wrong. They were deemed to be appropriate for the time. And the question you've got to have today is saying, well, the way costs have risen, it's only going to make it harder next year or the year after or the year after. There's never going to be a good time for this. And I guess the question I would have to have for Peter and his team is saying, what can be kicked down the road? What can we stop doing this year? And it's only this year we're talking about. That's not going to impact on levels of service. Because that's really, as I understand it, pretty much we need to maintain those levels of service. No one told us. I did hear one person say that we should ignore water standards and don't worry about it. So we'll just feed everybody water straight out of somewhere else. But short of doing that, if the work that's been done, and you've referred to it, Your Worship, about stuff that's already come out, we've taken away the nice to have. So we're now left with the core. And if that's not the case, then we haven't done a good enough job. But my understanding is we're now left with pretty much the core. And kicking it down the road ain't going to fix it. It's only going to come back and bite even harder. Just going to give it to someone else to be responsible for. And that's not how we do stuff in this council.
The last 2 years.
Do you want to comment on that, Peter, in terms of?
Yeah, well, the obvious area that's left now is levels of service. But that's not a conversation for an annual plan, that's an LTP. It is things like not mining the greenways, not watering the greenways. It's that level of discussion that you have to have collectively in the community boards and with the communities. Because when you start changing levels of service, then what people think they're getting is going to be altered. Hours in the swimming pool, hours in the library, the amount of libraries, the amount of museums, the amount of community halls, all so on and so on and so on. And that can only be in an LTP discussion because you have to go out and consult on that. It is not possible to dabble with the budget now that's going to impact levels of service because we haven't signalled that to our community now.
One other question I've got, Your Worship, is that
Yes.
there's I guess in terms of where we're going to go ultimately to make some resolutions, is that the submissions that we didn't hear from, and even the some that we did, are we going to effectively adopt a staff recommendation or all of them through the resolution we're going to pass, or are we going to go through each one and go tick, tick, tick? Because I've got a couple of questions on a couple of them, and one in particular, the submission from Gordon Stewart, where he spoke about rates for the equestrian club. I'm not sure that was directly referred to in a submission. I think it's probably an issue that's outside of this process, but just want to see if that's been picked up on and will be dealt with outside of this process, because I don't think it came through in a submission.
Yeah, sorry, I probably wasn't clear with people as we were going through the various, 3 orders and other sections. That was where, if there were submissions people wanted to speak to directly, that was the time to do it. But absolutely, if there are any that you've got your highlighters on your laptop over, or you've written on your hard copy in front of you that you want to address, now's the time to do it, and we can start. Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to relitigate what you've already done. I just want to make sure that we knew that we're going to actually, one of the resolutions will be we adopt the staff comments or recommendations, and if we do, there's just a correction on page 64. Sorry, it's not a correction, it's a question I've got about the separately used and inhabited parts. I'm just a bit confused by the comment that was in there about that we used to do it, but we don't anymore. I thought that there was, for the contiguous properties, you didn't pay more than one uniform charge. You didn't pay quite a few things you didn't pay more than one of. Is that what that was referring to?
So Neil, we still have the contiguous property remission. So if you're side by side, you get remission on certain rates.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. The SUIPs went some time ago.
Yes,
yeah,
so they went
cool.
in 2018, and this gentleman is requesting that they be brought back in because he has a contiguous property that is across 2 councils.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So therefore he's not entitled to the contiguous property remission.
Yep.
Because it's under 2 different councils.
Cool, that makes sense to me. Okay, and my other one is, sorry, just got to find my highlighting. I changed laptops at lunchtime, which didn't help, so I lost them, had to go and reinvent them.
While Neil finds that, can I just
Yeah.
cut in, Neil, up at the bottom of page 63? There was just one where I wasn't sure, the staff comment didn't seem to relate to the Keith Susan.
Yeah, you would have seen that point out to everyone.
Oh, yeah, that.
No, I missed that.
Did you?
Yeah. All right, if Wayne's fixed it, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Which one was that? Because I've got one of them.
Susie P.
Mine will be.
Oh, no, my one's on page 40. Submitter 33. The guy was talking about streetlights, and the comment is the one for 2 below, I think.
Forming Road, is that the Fraser Sinclair?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just talked about that straight after lunch. Tony might raise that one now.
Oh, sorry,
So
I didn't. Yeah.
We're not sure that we're not sure whether that is being done, whether it can be done.
No.
Oh, that's just when I joined. Yeah, just when I joined, Tony was talking about that.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Just that whatever the comment is needs to be reflected, because that doesn't seem to be the right comment. It doesn't seem to relate to it. It relates to 2 down from there.
Yeah. What was it you wanted to raise about the rates that Gordon Stewart mentioned, Neil?
Well, Gordon Stewart spoke about the way the rates are levied for the racecourse because of the 2 parcels, because of the old lease, and how that effectively they've overpaid. But I don't recall that. Can't remember seeing that in any submission from Central Lakes Equestrian, which was Peter Mead's submission. So
it did say something about Central Lakes Equestrian, but certainly didn't have the detail that he spoke about.
And I think he's done that also through a rates inquiry. So both Gordy and myself have that on their list. We'll need to do it through the property team as well, just to make sure we've got everything right.
yeah, Peter Mead's submission is on page 50, and I couldn't see anything in there about it. So I just sort of make sure that's been picked up, because I didn't think that it talked about the rates as such.
I think that the other thing to just note is that the value of the buildings on the racecourse is at 2 million, the capital value, whereas some of the other things that Gordon was comparing to don't have that sort of capital value related to the property.
I do wonder, the land value does seem quite high for when the uses are quite limited. It's not actually the same as rural land, but anyway, that's something that I'm sure that we, like all good property owners, when we get a new valuation from the government, who tell them what it's going to be anyway, according to one submitted today, we would challenge it if we thought it was grossly wrong, and I'd say it only went up by in proportion to what it's always been. So don't know what the issue is.
Yeah.
That's, I've got no other concerns to raise or things to clarify.
Anybody else have any in particular from the submitters?
I just, through the chair, do need to, add a comment from a submitter that's come in about their submission on, submission number 95, which is on page 72. It said, greetings, I've been reading through the submissions and staff comments on the submissions. I fear there's been a misunderstanding within my submission number 95. Realising now I should probably have made it clearer. I made the comment such a huge increase in rates warranted public meetings at which things could have been explained and people could have responded, but not having such meetings, the council has in fact shielded itself from how people feel. Staff response was council held 4 public meetings, Roxburgh, Alexandra, Ranford and Cromwell, each lasting 2 hours where elected members were present to answer questions from the community. I think staff are referring to the drop-in sessions that were advertised. I was referring to meetings. There are 2 different, having different definitions and purposes. Would it be possible to have that clarified at the meeting?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one because a drop-in meeting is a public meeting, but I think what that person is probably referring to is what we might call a traditional town hall meeting, which we've found through years of experience creates a lot of heat, very little illumination, and a lot of people I prefer drop-ins because I can have a one-on-one with a person who wouldn't in their life dream of standing up at a public meeting and speaking or asking a question or indeed saying, I can't pay my rates, what are you going to do? Which has had people almost in tears in front of me. They're not going to stand up at a town hall meeting and say that. And I know that because I've asked them on one occasion. So, yeah, but I take Anne's point and think if they're making the legal reference.
I'll give the comment thing, some of the suggesting that biannual forums between planning staff and the industry.
Yeah, we'll look at something like
Yeah. Good
I
idea.
mean, as we work our way through the new standard.
Yeah.
And we can start.
Anything else, anybody? Okay, so what do we do from here? We've got C, D, E, and F. We've dealt with A is perfunctory, so B considers the submissions and decides on the action that just should be taken. We're not really changing our course, are we? And I don't think there was anything extra we needed to add in. There was one thing.
Yeah, the staff submission with regards to the building consent. So there was one that Louise van der Voort talked about your building consent. Fees are going to be held at the 23-24 rate. So the proposed 10% increase is going to be removed. And that is what we need as a resolution. The other point that she raised was around dog fees, which is not going to be changed.
Wayne, have you been given some words for that?
Those 2,
Right, we might just pause for a moment. What, because those 2 to one side, so there's this, what should we become? Wayne's going to work on those 2, but what?
So I believe Wayne's prepared earlier.
You've done all that, right? We'll just pause and let you.
He's inserted the community board one.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
Just adding this to our thing.
Okay.
There's no more for the council to read. Who's?
So you don't need a resolution of the instructions.
I'll see any of the ones that have been. I'm not going to buy some of that. But it was the, yeah, I'll send you a video, but he's just been here for. I was trying to get it to go down because I know. I can't remember the names. We just got that 100 notes. I think that when I made one video too. And that's what I think I couldn't bother to read my. Yeah, the ones I was looking at the end.
It's a number.
That's another one with the call for a public meeting. Yeah. Trying to remember. There were a lot. Yeah.
We've got some words up there. We can all read, so I'm going to read them for you.
Could have put them in the chat, could you, Wayne?
Ah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, hang on, I'll just, share screen with you.
Good.
You see that, Neil?
Thank you.
So, those are all the ones that, I talked about earlier on for the community boards. And then I've taken B, I've done a J, just added the K, the political significance you made of that.
Very much in the case.
so the only thing that we need to have is J, action that should be taken. What's your recommendations on that? I mean, we consider submissions and notes the concerns raised. I have no idea what to put in that regard.
Well, assume it's, adopts the staff comments if we're not changing them,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
and
which sounds a bit simplistic, unless we're not. And that'll be as amended because a couple of them got changed.
Yeah,
I do
Yeah,
think
it's
that one
amended.
for 33, that was an error, and that would have been my error, so apologies. Managing those.
noting, well, there was a couple that were wrong there, but we need them in the resolutions. I mean, we've discussed them. I think that's.
You're fine.
Okay, is everyone comfortable with those?
Yeah.
Marty, what I'm going to do is move A through to whatever it takes to get so that,
Okay.
yeah, I'll move everything bar if. And Neil might second that.
Yeah.
Marty, you might not want to be part of it.
Well, who will speak this?
Why don't you move F to, yeah, thank you. Right. So I'll move, oh, no, why don't you just declare conflict for Carl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll clear conflict and refrain from voting on it. or whatever.
Okay.
So
So the last week for that night,
with that in mind, is there any further discussion, folks? I'll move A to whatever it gets to,
J.
J, and ask my deputy mayor to second those.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried, and I'll move K, Neil will second it, and Martin will abstain. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Alright.
Thank you, everybody. The date of our next meeting, I'll bring it to the date of our next meeting, obviously. Huge amount of work to get us here today, and it's ended in a result that nobody wants, because there's nothing to celebrate here, you know, and that's not a reflection on the work that's been done in many ways. The Marty and this has been greater than past ones, because there's been such effort to get us from that 44% to the 18%, which we still don't quite at all. But I want to thank the staff, Peter, I'll give you a chance to comment too, but I want to thank the staff, councillors for the work done, and look forward to the long-term plan next year to try to make other things happen. Peter, comments from you.
Yeah, no, look, thank you, your worship, and to council, look, it has been a tricky process, particularly given that the changes in the government direction that occurred towards the end of late last year to recalibrate and focus on an annual plan as opposed to the LTP. And so it did mean that a lot of work had to be done. And the fact is we did start on at 45%. And so we've managed to pull that back through a lot of great effort by the finance team and the staff. But, you know, and if we accept 18.4 as a charitable position to be in and to land, but we do have the LTP process. We will be able to have conversations with the community on how we can address that. The long-term affordability, because right now it is really expensive doing stuff that councils have to do. But for where we've landed, I'm certainly grateful for the effort. I hadn't anticipated a rates rise of this significance when I started here, so it's also a bit of a shock for myself as well. But we've got to where we have to be. I think we've made the right decision. But it's just a tough decision to make, and I certainly compliment our boards and our council, because ultimately all I have to do is put up the information to you. You're the ones who have to make that hard call and make that decision. So I certainly commend you for that.
Thank you, Peter. Date of the next meeting's
We'll stop.
stop.
I've missed one.
Okay, we've missed one, so stop, pause, re-engage.
Are you happy, missed out that Oh, deliberations, one.
Oh, I think I referred to Alice K, that was her event.
Look at the two slide, yeah, there's one I'm missing. Sorry, 1 minute. Oh, don't worry, I put the Boston Festival down the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you had some pressure on the other, like, it's playing.
And I was saving thanking you for all your efforts for last.
There was no mistake, I just put down the bottom, sorry about that.
We all use it.
Wayne, you've got to plug in there twice.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah, now, because I thought that's the one I missed.
Okay, next meeting, 26th of June. Peter, do you want to close this with karaoke?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you got the English translation? Whakataha ki te uru, whakatakataha ki te tonga kia mā kina ki uta kia mā tātā ki ta ehi aki ana te atakura ki tio. The hooker ki hoku tihei mō. I will win the English version before next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Wayne, did you see my note?
Here we go.